Welcome to the Pacific Research Institute's Next Round podcast. I'm Rowena Itchon, Senior Vice President, and with me, as always, is Tim Anaya, Senior Director of Communications. So, Tim, I was in San Francisco over the weekend. I had opera tickets, and it was really the first time in a while that I spent more than an hour or two in the city since COVID. I was pleasantly surprised, actually. The War Memorial Opera House looked like it was pretty full. And the restaurants in the surrounding area, like Hayes Valley, were doing a pretty vibrant business. But still, there wasn't the traffic that I used to see, people strolling around on a Sunday, going into shops. The traffic was easy. There wasn't the usual hustle bustle. The streets seemed a little cleaner to me. Of course, the homeless, they were still out in full force, but I don't know. I didn't feel that there was a serious recession happening. But of course, the break-in into the Pelosi's home was all the talk, in the city. And it seems to me if you can break into their home, is anyone safe?
Well, that's exactly right. My first thought when I heard of this incident was, just what a terrible thing, and just prayers for him and his recovery. But B, I hope, kind of focuses the attention on crime in San Francisco and crime in our big cities, that this isn't just wacky right-wing people saying stuff on the internet, that, if the Speaker of the House's husband is nearly killed in a break-in at their house in the most exclusive and really well-patrolled, area of the city, that really shows anybody could become a victim of crime, and a victim of crime in their own home. So I'm interested to see after this kind of really another black eye for San Francisco's national reputation, will what needs to be done finally be done in the city? And I am not very optimistic that it will be.
Well, from that terrible story, there's this other ridiculous story going around. And you probably heard of it. It's this bathroom in Noe Valley. Now, for listeners who don't know the city very well, Noe Valley is this lovely little enclave of San Francisco where a lot of families live. Well, apparently the community was going to get a toilet for the middle of the square in Noe Valley. And the cost? $1.7 million, one toilet. Now, if that isn't absurd enough, the kicker, here's a real story. It's going to take 3 years. Unbelievable. So the city's got to be completely dysfunctional when one little toilet is going to cost $1.7 million and take 3 years to build.
Well, and even Gavin Newsom has gotten into the act, threatening to take away, I guess there's some state funding that was going to fund these toilets. Yes, it's ridiculous. Walk down Market Street. Would you ever go in a public toilet on Market Street? Never. Do we really need? Yes, we want to have the lowest price. You want to have competition in bidding for these things, but it just seems a little absurd the way that they're going about this. Porta-johns aren't attractive, but I'm sure they cost a lot less than $1.7 million.
I worry for the city. Now, Elon Musk took over Twitter. There might be some layoffs. Twitter has offices right there on Market Street. There are, I believe, I read 7,000 employed by Twitter in the city. So that's the city's going to take another hit with people potentially moving away. As a former resident, close to 15 years in San Francisco, it makes me very, very sad to see the city in decline. I took the ferry from the ferry building into Marin, and the sun was going down. The Golden Gate Bridge was at the backdrop, as well as the San Francisco skyline. You don't get that anywhere in the U.S.
Well, my first thought when I heard of the rumors that a lot of layoffs are pending is, well, how long is it before Twitter decides to leave San Francisco and leave California altogether? Certainly Tesla has moved, a good chunk of its operations outside of California. How long before Twitter's headquarters moves to Texas or some other similar state?
So let's talk a little bit about the election. I haven't read many things changing. The sports betting propositions are really looking good in the polls. That 2% tax on Californians making over $2 million. Now, that was interesting. It took a hit after Governor Newsom came out against it. But here in Los Angeles, Karen Bass and Rick Caruso, they're still neck and neck doing a lot of visits. I read over the paper this weekend in areas of Los Angeles populated by Latinos. So they're both trying to reach to that audience. Here in Pasadena, my neck of the woods, the race between Mike Garcia and Christy Smith is heating up. A lot of money had been spent on that race. The issue is that after redistricting, the areas become a little more Democrat, a little less Republican, cutting out Simi Valley. So I'm watching that race pretty closely.
We're kind of at the point of the election, about a week out. There's no question that the national trend is tilting toward the Republicans, and Republicans are kind of gaining favor in some of these areas where you would never expect a Republican to gain. However, maybe count me a pessimist. I'll believe it when I see it. It seems like whatever, if you look at Twitter, wherever you fall on the political spectrum, there's a poll to bolster your party's candidate. So we're kind of in this time of confirmation bias. So my advice to everybody who are interested in these things, I plan to tune a lot of this out between now and Tuesday evening. For everyone's good health, they would be wise to do the same thing, because I don't know if I can take another 7 days of he's ahead, she's ahead, no, he's ahead, no, she's ahead.
That said, let's turn to our podcast guest. Tim, you had a great find here. Why don't you introduce him?
So we're talking with Todd Myers from Washington Policy Center, and our listeners, of course, may be familiar with Pam Lewison from Washington Policy Center, who does a lot of great work on ag policy for them and also for PRI. So Todd has a great new book out that really makes the case that government initiatives on the environment are always some massive thing. And Todd makes the case that really, if we want to make real headway on things like climate change and drought and improving water quality and increasing use of renewables and all of these sorts of things, we shouldn't be looking to government for big initiatives. We should be thinking small and looking to kind of citizen-based efforts to tackle these issues. And he makes the case that people with their smartphones can have just as big, if not a bigger impact in addressing climate change and improving the planet than a lot of these big government initiatives that we spend billions and billions of dollars on with little result. And of course, those government initiatives also involve bureaucrats dictating how you run your business or how you live your life. So it's a really interesting book that I highly recommend. It's out this week. And I think you'll be very interested to hear what Todd has to say.
Well, thanks everyone for listening, and go out and vote.